So somebody comes into your office and what are some of we kind of talked a little bit about the symptoms, but what are some of the ones that maybe people have, but they don't realize it's connected to a hormone imbalance?
Hormone imbalance. Okay. Well, hormones there's a kind of a combination. We call it the way at which your body talks, cellular talk.
Okay.
The immune system is tied up with hormones. The neurological system is tied up with hormones. So your neurological symptoms might be, people know that more, serotonin or GABA. Have you heard of those? Okay. Those are actually hormones of the brain.
Okay.
And so serotonin drops, females get depressed, men get curmudgeonly, both of them can't sleep well. Okay. So that's actually a hormone. People wouldn't recognize that as being one, I don't think, because they're going like, oh, you got depression, here's your antidepressant.
Right.
And that's totally believe in antidepressants. I've actually had depression before myself when I was very young, back in probably early 20s. I had severe depression, anxiety, went on medication. I got suicidal. And
really?
Yeah, it kept me from killing myself, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And so I really have a big place in my heart for psychologists and people that can help people out of that, out of those type of situations. But for a lot of the times, that's probably, in my case, that was probably a genetic condition, plus nutrition. A lot of things were going off at that time of drinking too much. The whole works was not going well. And so I saw at that time, actually, even in my 20s, I was probably having a hormonal abnormality. Now, you wouldn't have thought that. You wouldn't have said, oh, you're 20, you got everything going for you on the wrestling team. So it definitely wasn't. You wouldn't think that was hormonal, but it was. So I was going off the rails. Nutritional, neurological, hormone-wise, psychologically.
And it just,
that's a pretty big example, and we see that a lot. We see that. It's not unusual.
Right.
Yeah.
So for people who, depression seems to be one of those things that is, I don't think it's it may be on the rise, but I think more and more people are talking about it now.
Right.
Because it used to be a stigma. It used to be something that if somebody said that they were depressed, it was, people didn't know how to respond. People didn't know kind of how to talk about it. So with you having personal experience in that, it's not often that you find a doctor who's there to help you, who's like, no, I've also been through this. Like, I know what you are feeling.
Right.
So when you were going through that at that time, do you feel like people today that come into your office who maybe are experiencing depression, things like that, do you feel like there is a common thread with people who are depressed, as in they see the world a certain way, or there's almost this, you can tap into helping them because you've been there before and it's similar to you? Or do you feel like depression is such a vast thing that affects people in so many different ways?
Well, depression hits people different ways. I think if you were to take 100 people that said they're depressed, you're going to see, and you ask them, what are your symptoms? It could be a real large range.
Okay.
I'm just tired to want to kill myself.
Right.
They could be huge range of symptoms. So I don't think people have a real definition. They feel it. Most commonly, it's felt like it's interesting, that little cartoon on television with the dark cloud that hangs over the sky and it just follows them around and they can't seem to get it out. You know? And they take the pill and all of a sudden the air clears. It's very similar to that, the way I experienced it anyway, where you have this dark cloud hanging over you and you don't want it and it just sits there.
That's interesting.
That was me. Now that's my interpretation of it.
But it's interesting you said you don't want it. So that even in the throes of depression, I don't want this and I want to be free of it. And the general thing is go see a psychiatrist, get medication, and you'll be better. And you've even said, like, yes, that did work for you. So you've now taken it a step further and you say, how can we do this naturally? How can we do this to where you now eat foods that are going to help you with that, that we're balancing what's already going on in your body so that you don't have to rely on this one pill and then not ever actually like fix the issue. So how do you go about assessing? So people come in, they have a wide variety of issues. Is it individual based? So you have to talk to them, you have to kind of get their story, or is it like everyone that comes to your office can do this, this, and this, and now they're good. Like, what is it that you do?
I wish it was that easy. We could go to the Kmart and just go.
Yeah.
Or they don't have Kmarts anymore. Walmart.
I know, we don't have Kmart.
And they could just punch in your thing and get their pill, but it's not like that. There's a bit of an art and science and a bit of working with somebody.
Right.
You know, hate to say experimenting, but you have to work with somebody to find out what's going to work there. For the most cases, it depends on the level of depression or how long they've had it and what's their history. But we would suggest a psychologist, so psychological counseling. Usually there's other things going on in the family or things happening that you need to really help correct. A lot of times psychiatrists are more going to be medical oriented or work for pills or drugs that help you through some problem. And then there's the integrative point. Integrative medicine, it's one of the largest things we have. I have a book that's probably that big that I've studied, for the boards, and they list about 100 different problems that people can have, and it starts with the number one problem. What do you think it is?
I have no idea.
We're talking about it.
Is it depression?
Yeah, that's depression. That's the number one thing in the list.
Really?
Depression. The next one is anxiety. Yeah,
wow.
So they list those symptoms and those diagnoses, and then they go through that, and then toward the end, there's the last things that people come in with, and so they put that in order. So that is one of the number one symptoms that people have, and most people have experienced anxiety and or depression at least some points in their life, but we're talking about people that dark cloud won't go away.
Right.
I mean, situational depression is actually, I don't want to say good for you, but it's actually a human thing. Somebody dies in the family, or you have grief, or something's going on maybe with your marriage or finances or this thing, and you're going to experience depression. It can help you. It hurts, and you want to change it. That's not bad. Okay, to help you get support for your grieving or change things you're doing for your finances. So it's not bad for humans, I don't think, to have it. If it stays there, that's when it gets to be a problem.
Right.
When you start getting to where I can't see my way out. And you ask me, how do people feel? They normally, by the time they're ended up coming to me, they don't feel like they have hope. They feel like they're just down this rabbit hole and they can't get out. And they're trying to find their way out. And so that's the art and the science of depression, I think. And so we would run a genetic study. Genetics are so good nowadays for that. So we run genetic studies. We'll get usually a nutritional analysis to see. A lot of people, believe it or not, have B vitamins off. Magnesium and B vitamins, my goodness, that'll throw your brain for a loop.
Really?
Oh yeah. When you can't either metabolize them or you're not getting them in your diet. And then a lot of people are often what they call their inflammatory, it's actually inflammatory hormones.